Hey traders, 𝐿𝐼𝐴 here. You're here for another episode of Common Sense Market Analysis. Today is Hump Day, October 22nd, 2025. You're looking at a daily chart of the SPY or Spiders, which is the proxy for the S&P 500. What do we have on the docket today? Well, let me tell you this. We got a lot of things on the docket today. Not to mention, we had a little bonanza day all around the board. First things first, as always, we're going to start with the S&P, see where we're at, what to expect later on this week. So today we had a little Wipeout Wednesday. Wasn't necessarily a huge wipeout, we're only down 0.51%, $3.43. Going over to a 15-minute time frame, just getting a different perspective of today's activity. Towards the middle of the afternoon, things really weren't looking too good for Mrs. Market. We made a low today of 663.30. There are those 369 numbers. But around the end of the day, we had a nice little recovery. Today's close is at 667.79. So it wasn't a total wipeout, as we did recover. And take a look at where she recovered at. Pretty much right at Friday's gap. That gap comes in at 664.32. As you can see, pretty much nailed it right on the dot. Bounced about $4 or so. Came back down to retest it. Still continued to find support at that area. And she bounced back pretty much to where we were at the open of Monday. So on Monday, we discussed that we had a little tinfoil hat event. That was a new moon that was taking place yesterday on Turnaround Tuesday. And we didn't really get a Turnaround Tuesday. We were only down 1 penny. But when it comes to these tinfoil hat events, the market either likes to trade up or down into these events. And not every time, but many times, the market will turn after these events. And generally speaking, it doesn't have to be the minute after or the day after. In this case, we had a little bit of a turn the day after. I'm not saying that the tinfoil hat event was the sole reason for today's down day, but it's just some puzzle piece information that we need to be aware about. And maybe that's all the turn was just going back to complete some unfinished business down below at this gap right here at 664.32, and that might have been all she needed to do towards the downside. Another test / spike of the 20 period moving average filled this gap. Markets don't like to leave these gaps unfilled. They like to finish the finished business. And now we're still above all the moving averages, closing above the 20 after a little spike through, and just taking it at face value, she just went to complete some unfinished business. Take it at face value. But regardless of that, and this little down day that we had, we're still in a very bullish position. Still near or around the previous all-time highs, staying above all the moving averages, therefore, she's bullish and the trend is your friend. Remember we said yesterday that we're not necessarily going to be surprised if we receive a little bit of a pullback before making new all-time highs, or vice versa. We're not going to be surprised if we make a new all-time high before a pullback. We didn't really know which one was going to happen. Again, the market's job is to trick, trap, and fool as many traders as possible. But as long as we're still staying above all the moving averages, the longer-term pivot number, that number comes in at 660. Again, 2 cents off, not going to get it perfect, but you get the idea. So staying above all of this is the bull case scenario, and I still think that we can poke our heads above the all-time high. And I do have some important numbers up above when that time comes. I've worked out the mathematics. So yesterday we were talking a little bit about silver and gold. We said that all this move really was just coming back to retest home base, being the 20 period moving average. Found some support at this breakup candle low. Around the low, maybe a little spike through. Today, we did manage to retest the 20 period moving average towards the upside, but today marks day 2 of closing candles below it. But what's also important is staying above this breakup candle low. All right, so we're going to see which way silver wants to go. If silver's still in a bullish position, we can recapture that 20 period moving average, start to close candles above, and then work our way back up towards this breakdown candle high. Or maybe this was a sign and or signal of a trend change, and we do have another leg lower, and that leg lower, most likely towards the 50 period moving average, that happens to coincide right with this breakup candle low. But that's going to happen if we start to break and close candles below this breakup candle low. Therefore, the door will open to another leg lower. And then pretty much the same deal with gold. Silver did the deal earlier than gold did regarding retesting the 20 period moving average home base. Today, gold did do the deal. So silver did it first, gold followed suit. This number, 4014.4, remains unchanged from the number that I gave you yesterday. Today's low is at 4021.2. Coming up a little bit short, still managing to reach the 20 period moving average home base, closing candles above it. Okay, so now they both retested home base. One's closing below, the other one's closing above. We'll see what happens later on this week, but I got something pretty interesting to show you guys. One of our live room members, Sneer, was kind enough to send me this email. He said, check out GC Gold Futures resistance number 2 right at the open. The number was so accurate, my limit order right on it didn't get filled. 70 points and counting. On the screen, you can see resistance number 2 for gold futures. That number comes in at 4101, and we're going to put that on the chart. And look at this high right here. The exact high is 4101, just like what Sneer said, right on the freaking dot. 70-point rocket ride. A little bit more than 70 points, actually. But wait, there's more. Take a look at support number 4 for GC. That comes in at 4028. We'll put that number on the board. And as you can see, pretty much right on the dot again. Spiked it by a little bit, but pretty much caught low of day. How do you like them apples? That was a live room / inside the numbers trade. And this is exactly what I mean when I say we have something for everybody. Did we have any other trades besides gold? And the short answer is, hell yeah, we did. I told you that we had a little bonanza day going on. So we're taking a look at inside the numbers. What you're looking at right now is the 0 dark 30 notes. This is the morning game plan that's laid out to members well before the opening bell. My dog was eating some crap outside the other day, got a little stomach ache this morning. So of course he woke me up early to him throwing up all over the place. So I was already up, ready to go. I think I got these notes out at around 6:30, I want to say. So that's 3 hours before the opening bell. The morning game plan. Let's go take a look. We got the morning pivot at 671.25. We don't need to worry about any overhead resistance numbers, as we didn't reach any today, but we did have some support numbers. And we did have a trade within the first 5 or 10 minutes of the trading day. Just how we liked it. Get in and get out. We had a zone of support from the pivot to 670.60. Let's go take a look. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the morning trade. To the right of the vertical line is today's activity. We got the pivot in green and then all the support numbers in blue. So you could have traded this a few different ways. You could have bought some at the pivot, bought some more averaged in down below at 670.60, or more conservative traders could have waited for the back end number of the zone at 670.60. Spiked it by just a touch, and then ripped it right back up in the other direction for a nice base hit. Base hits put you in the Hall of Fame. Okay, we got above the pivot, around 60 cents above the pivot, so that does fall in line right with the base hit. A base hit is 50 to 70 SPY cents, or 5 to 7 ES points. And then we started to get down below, found some more support at the back end number, played ping pong back and forth between the pivot. Those two numbers were certainly important. Just going back to inside the number notes, as you can see, at 9:31, came right into the first support number, showtime. The next number down is at 670.60, looking for a base hit. And then at 9:34, came right into the next number at 670.60. 9:37, another update. And then at 9:40, we got the base hit. We hold trailers for the never know, and we don't let the trade go bad on us. How you doing? I think I forgot to mention the other support numbers that we had down below. We had one at 669.55 and then another one at 668.50, an important number. So we got those two numbers on the board. As you can see, spiked through support number 2 at 669.55, but then did indeed find support at support number 3, nailing it right on the dot the first time around. Came back down for a little spike of it, ripped it right back up. So as you can see, that number was certainly important. And both of these numbers were important. Take a look at 669.55. Okay, although we did spike through that number, take a look at what happened right here. We used it as overhead resistance on the way back up. Couldn't get back above it, couldn't close candles back above, and then we fell all the way down, pretty much filling that gap we talked about earlier. But wait, there's more. If we scroll all the way up to the end of the day wrap up at 11 o'clock, I gave you some just in caser numbers. We had a number at 665.80 and then another one at 664.40. How you doing? Blew by the 665.80 number, but that will be important and I'll explain why in a moment. And then at 664.40, spiked it by a little bit, but did indeed find support at that number. Gave you a ton of points, at least a triple. Now this is in the afternoon. The afternoon, as we know, is a different type of tape. We don't necessarily like to trade the afternoon. It's torture time, especially when the market was kind of all over the place in the afternoon. So we kind of left it alone, but this just goes to show you that the numbers work. And then that 66580 number that I talked about, look how he used it as overhead resistance on the way back up, right here, and ate some time off the clock at that number. So despite blowing through it the first time, that number can still be important later. I know I probably already said this like 3 times, but wait, there's more. A bonanza day cannot be a bonanza day without stocks on the move. Now today we had 4 stocks on the move. Now I'm just throwing this out there that all of these stocks do say yes for entry hit. That is not the case. I am having some slight trouble with this table, but I will 100% get it fixed by tomorrow's session. So just know that all 4 did not hit their entry targets. We had 2 hit their entry targets. That was Matt and Netflix. Netflix was taken off the board. We discussed that in the live room. We came up short the first time. Then we hit the first entry later on in the afternoon during torture time. So that was off the board. And then in TXN, we unfortunately did come up a tad bit short and missed out on the rocket ride. That's a trader's life. That's okay. But we did have one nice trade in Matt. So let's go take a look. We got entry number 1 at 1730 and entry number 2 at 1716. So we got Mattel Incorporated, MAT. We got all the numbers on the board. We hit entry number 1 and 2. The stop is at 1695. Never once touched it. Came up a little bit short. And then look at this absolute freaking rocket ride. Made a high of almost 19 bucks. That's a pretty nice trade if you ask me. We could also give that one a how do you like dem apples. And then just for fun, I'll show you TXN. We missed out on the rocket ride. The number that we had was at 162.42. Made a low of 163.04. Came up a tad bit short. And then we missed out on the rocket ride. That's a trader's life. We move on because there's always another opportunity around the corner. Like always, you can pause the video, read the notes, and go back to the chart to double check the work. Everything's in here for you. The morning game plan, the intraday updates, the afternoon write-up, you got stocks on the move, and then not to mention, we have a list of 13 different markets with support and resistance numbers. That's all for Inside the Numbers / live room. If you've been looking for a game plan, the numbers, you're tired of guessing, you need guidance, we have everything that you need to become a successful trader in Inside the Numbers / the live room. If you purchase the live room, you get Inside the Numbers for free. How you doing? Now we're going to take a quick trip around the world and take a look at some of the other markets, starting with Camp IWM, my #1 favorite market leading indicator. And as we can see, we continue to play around with these 2 important numbers. We were down 1.48% today. We tried to recapture that 247.18 number towards the upside. Today we made a high of 246.86. If we zoom in a bit, we can see that we had this gap left over from yesterday. Tried to finish it, wasn't able to, so now that's declared as some unfinished business. That number was at 646.99. And now we started to close candles below this zone. Also, not to mention, we did take care of some unfinished business towards the downside. That was this gap right here at 243.41, which we closed pretty much right on it. So although we missed the unfinished business towards the upside, we did complete some towards the downside. And also we found some support right at this breakup candle low. Came up a bit short of the exact low, but remember, nothing in the market is perfect. Okay, we're not in search of absolute perfection because it's almost impossible to get. Although sometimes we do achieve perfection with these numbers like we saw in gold, nailing some right on the dot. We do have those from time to time, but a large majority of the time, nothing is perfect. That goes for in the market and in life. So it was around the vicinity of this big time breakup candle low, the largest one we see on the chart besides maybe this one. So there was going to be some support. You got this 50 period moving average down below. If we continue to keep closing candles below this zone where this purple box is, if we close candles below and we eventually get below this breakup candle low, then we're going to head towards this 50 period moving average and possibly even a spike towards it, retesting these lows. And there could potentially be a spike the low and rip it right back up trade with this breakup candle low. Potentially. These are targets towards the downside. Take it as you will. Remember how I said nothing in the market is absolutely perfect? But sometimes they are with our numbers because the numbers work. And that goes for Camp IWM. Sneer even said in addition to GC resistance number 2 being spot on, IWM numbers were also right on the nose today. Sneer, it's actually right on the dot. But again, thank you for the email and as always, great work. you are greatly appreciated. So take a look at some of these IWM numbers we had on the board. We had support number 2 at 245.15, support number 3 at 244.35, and number 4 at 243.35. That's a lot of 5s and 35s. Here we are at support number 1. The low was at 245.16. So we actually came up 1 penny short, but we don't split hairs over pennies. Did find some support, gave you at least a base hit, and then we did halt at 244.35, but I'm showing you guys this number because look at what happened as we utilized it towards the upside. Used it as overhead resistance. And then also take a look at support number 4 at 243.35. The low right here is at 243.32. How you doing? That's just a little sneak peek of what Inside the Number members got for Camp IWM. Now we're going to switch gears and head over to my number 2 favorite market leading indicator, the transportation department. She's up 0.78%. And I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, the pivot is not out of the question just yet. Okay, the pivot comes in at 15,650. That's this green line right here. Happens to coincide right with the 20-period moving average. You got some moving averages bunched up together. Not entirely bunched up, but you got the 50, 20, and 100 pretty close together. And after finding some resistance at these breakup candle lows, spiked it by a little bit, but this was overhead resistance. She's coming right back down to test these moving averages and even the pivot. Came up short of the 50 today. Might not be the same situation tomorrow. We do have some unfinished business. If we scroll in a little, you got this gap right here that comes in at 15,676 right in front of the pivot. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go down to complete this unfinished business and maybe another retest of the pivot. Trying to see if we can maintain price above all the moving averages. Therefore, we're bullish and the trend is indeed your friend. We'll be on the lookout in the transportation department. Not to mention, we do have some other unfinished business at 15,496 down below. If we get below the pivot, that's another number that you should certainly write down on a sticky note. How are you doing in XLF, the financials? We're down 0.57%. We put this number on the board yesterday. That was this gap right here. That was some more unfinished business. That was at 52.18. And today we made a low of 52.12. How are you doing? So we did find support off of that number. Did close below the 100 period moving average after we spent 2 days closing above it. So we'll see if that could hold true. Not to mention we do have some unfinished business at 53.24. We could get rid of this box and this number as we already nailed that front end number. So we do have the back end number at 53.24. That gap unfinished business coinciding right with the 20 and the 50 period moving average. So we said yesterday, which unfinished business does XLF want to complete first? And the answer was towards the downside at 52.18. And now we're closing candles below 3 out of the 4 moving averages. We still have Thursday and Friday before the week ends, but this weekly close is going to hold some importance in XLF. But just looking at the bigger picture, we're hovering over the 20 period moving average on the weekly chart, and just taking it at face value, removing all the noise on the daily chart, we can say that there's nothing wrong with the chart. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with XLF. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with the overall structure of the market. What about the Q people? She's down 0.96%. Funny how that works. If you know, you know. And just like the spiders, we did go ahead and complete the unfinished business at 603.93. That number was put on the board in yesterday's video. We took care of that number, spiked the 20 period moving average by a little bit. We made a low today of 599.74. You remember those 2 important numbers I gave you in the Qs? One of them was at 600. That's a big fat round number. 2 cents off. Let me just go ahead and fix that. But that was a pivot-ish number, and we went right back down to retest it. Matter of fact, let's go make this green to represent a longer-term pivot number. Unfinished business completed, retest of the 20 period moving average completed, retest of the longer-term pivot number completed, and we're closing candles above all of that. And we are still in a bullish situation. Last but not least, we got SMH shaking my head, the semiconductors. Smash mouth. We're down 1.94%. Same deal as all the other markets. We went to complete some unfinished business down below. That number came in at this gap right here at 333.50. The low today was 332.40. So we went back to complete some unfinished business, spiking the 20-period moving average, still closing candles above all the moving averages. But one important puzzle piece information to note is that if we zoom in a little, we can see that we did come up a little bit short of yesterday's gap. That gap comes in at 345.30. So now that becomes some unfinished business towards the upside. We'll see if she wants to complete that tomorrow. But overall, all across the board, we're still in a bullish position. Okay, we just had to complete some stuff down below. Markets don't like to leave that stuff unfinished. That's a technical term. Now, just because we're closing candles above the 20-period moving average in multiple markets all across the board, SMH, spiders, the Qs, in IWM, my number one favorite market leading indicator, we did not. So that might be a tell. But the point being in me saying this is that just because we're closing candles above it today might not be the same deal tomorrow. We'll take it one day at a time. We still have those important pivot numbers, mainly in the spiders and the Qs, that we gotta be on the lookout for. Have I told you guys how much I appreciate each and every single one of you? Without you guys, these videos or MSF would not be possible. That is true and accurate information. Put it on a sticky note. We're going to pull the ripcord for today. Thank you all so much for tuning in for another episode of Common Sense Market Analysis. I'm 𝐼𝐞𝐵. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, as it helps me and the channel out a lot. With that said, I hope each and every single one of you has a great rest of your day. Stay safe and take care now, folks.